Hi, Terry Rowland of T Rose Studios. Today I'm going to talk about temperature quilts. That time of year again, everybody's thinking about doing something like this. Well, the way I operate is I'm a get her done kind of girl. I like to start a project and jump right in and power sew and get it done. So I've decided I am going to do my temperature quilt this year, but I'm going to use last year's data. So it'll be a 2022 temperature quilt. I've gone through and done the history and written down the highs and lows of every day of the year. So I've got 2 months on each sheet with the highs and the lows. So January, February, March, April, May, June, and so on. So I've got all the data for the whole year. So that means I can jump right in and start making my blocks. So the very first thing you have to do is you have to make a chart of the colors you're going to use. Let's get it up right. So I'll try and explain how I've done it. Basically, our high temperature in our area, which is in Canada, plus 30 is pretty high for us. And we can get down to about minus 40. So I've done my gauge from plus 30 all the way down to minus 40. So I have got 24 different breaks in the color. Now I chose to use 3 degrees as my changing point. Some people have 12, so they may have theirs at 5 or 8 degree breaks. I wanted to have lots of different color breaks. Now, here is the fabric I'm using. And I'm not using just 24 fabrics. So in my minus 25 to 27, you can see I've got 4 different fabrics in that one. Let me pull out another one. What's one this? This is minus 2, minus 3, and minus 1. And I had more of these, so I've only got 2 left. But that's sort of how I grabbed scraps and bits and pieces of fabrics that were the color I wanted. So this whole container is the 24 different color breaks that I'm using for my temperature quilt. Now, layout. I decided to do an 18 squares by 21 squares. Now, in a whole year, you have 365 days, but an 18 by 21 is 378 squares. The reason I did that is I'm going to put a space where these X's are, is a space between the months. So I've got January here, and it's going to come up to here. There's the 31st. I'm going to put a spacer, and then I'm going to start February. February is going to go all the way down to here. When I got to the 28th, I put a spacer. I don't like the temperature quilts that have each month is a different row. They just don't appeal to me. And then the lengths aren't the same because the months don't have the same number of days in them. So this one would have 31, and then February would have 28, and then you've got all those awkward squares on them. I'm going to do a continuous line, and it's going to snake like this. I could do it up and down. I could put my blocks out going sideways. I could put them diagonally if I wanted to. So I'm going to use an 18 by 21 layout, utilizing the spare spaces to go between the months. So that'll give me my month break where I can see where they're at. Now, I've decided I'm going to cut my squares at 4-inch. I don't have a 4-inch ruler. I'm going to use my 5-inch ruler to cut my squares so that they measure 4-inch. So it's going to be a nice throw size. It won't be super big, so it'll be a smaller quilt. All right, so to do that, a 5-inch square will make a 4-inch block. If you've got some leftover 5-inch squares you want to use, you can cut a 2-inch strip and another 2-inch strip, and you'll have 1 inch left over. If you've got not too big a 1/4 inch seam, you can cut a 4-inch block out of that once you've sewn them together. So I'll just show. So a lot of them I did 2, 2, and then I've got a 1-inch strip. This 1-inch strip will go in the center. I will cut it in half. I will split it. So this is my high, and I'll find a scrap that is my low. Sew those together and then sew these together, and then I can cut it down to 4-inch. Okay, that makes sense? Pretty easy construction. If I've got a bigger square, so these were some leftover squares I had. If I'm cutting that down, I'm going to cut it down to 4.5 inches. Now I'm going to go sideways, and I'm going to cut my two. And if I want a little wiggle room, I'm going to cut this 1.5 or 1.25. Again, cutting it, finding my low temperature, whatever it happens to be, piece that into the middle, piece these together, and I will be able to square a 4-inch block out of the center of that. Why did I cut this 4.5 inches? I like a little wiggle room. If I don't particularly have this started properly, and I can't get that 4-inch, then I've got to make another block. By making it 4.5, I give myself enough room to square all the way around that block. Okay, and I don't have any that are too tight. A 5 inch is tight. If you've got to have a proper 1/4 inch seam. If you've got too big a 1/4 inch seam, you're not going to be quite 4 inches wide. Do you have to make them 4 inches? No, you could go back to my color wash quilt and make them 3.5. I was just trying to utilize some 5-inch blocks that I had left over. So I'm going to continue doing this, making blocks and putting them in my little baggies. I have them in this stack. It goes from 1 all the way down to 31. So in this baggie, my number 1 is on the top.
January?
Oh, this is January, and I've got a January tag on it, and I've got a January name on my Ziplocs. So I shouldn't screw up. When I go to lay them out, I'm going to start with my January one and start at the top and go all the way across, or diagonally, or up and down, whichever way I decide. I haven't quite decided that yet. You need to get to this stage and get started making blocks before we're going to be putting them together. And you can decide later how you're going to put them together and what kind of a layout you're going to do. Okay? It's just fun. It's going to be very colorful because I've used lots and lots of different colors. Mine is going to tend to be sort of the hot colors are here, and then I'm going into the medium type colors. Now I'm starting to get cooler, and this one is the coldest. So there should be quite a few of these in our winter conditions here. It'll be fun to see it come together. Now, because I've done retrospective, so I've gone back a year, I can make kits for all of my blocks that I'm going to be making, as long as I get them stacked properly. When I make my month, I'll get them tucked into these bags, and I'm going to just fly through this project. So I know I got a couple of retreats coming in, so I'm hoping to get this going in the next couple months and actually have it completed in the next couple months. So we're going to call this project Scrap with Terry Temp Quilt. Should be fun. If you like what I'm doing, follow me on YouTube and share and do all of those things that you're supposed to do there.